Summer what?
Summerween! The people of this town love Halloween so much they celebrate it twice a year.
Hey y'all, the Movie Howze here, never wanting to pass up the chance to celebrate all things Halloween twice in a year. So on top of our regularly scheduled hullabaloo in the fall, I present a brand new SUMMERWEEN Spooktacular to shed light on scary movies to enjoy on a hot summer's day, and you're just in time to hear me talk about. As a producer, Frank Marshall was a titan during the 80s and 90s. Whenever you saw Steven Spielberg's name, be it as a director or producer, right behind him usually every step of the way was Marshall and Marshall's wife, fellow producer Kathleen Kennedy. This gave him enough clout to try his hand helming his own movies. But for the few films he did direct, Marshall was consistently almost great, delivering perfectly serviceable fun movies that could never quite live up to their premise. Say kids, y'all love Jurassic Park, right? Well, this summer, the same people that brought you Jurassic Park have another blockbuster adaptation of a Michael Crichton novel, Congo, where you are the endangered species. And then you see the end result after all the hype and just go, yeah, it was alright. That's not to say they weren't worth watching though. And I think my favorite movie of his is 1990's horror comedy Arachnophobia. The plot concerns a newly discovered and highly venomous fuck-huge South American spider that accidentally gets shipped back stateside to the quiet California town of Canaima. Into the arachnophobic Dr. Ross Jennings, newly arrived from San Francisco with his family in tow to become the town's new resident sawbones. Unbeknownst to him and the townsfolk, this unwelcomed eight-legged freak starts a colony, as this species acts like a beehive with an army of sexless worker drones skittering about to do the bidding of its general, and the bodies start piling up. Now it's up to Jennings and the colorful townsfolk of Canaima to stop this infestation before it spreads, like a biblical plague, killing everything in its path. If this sounds silly, don't worry, the filmmakers are aware and very much in on it. With a solid enough script with some really good setups and payoffs, it also looks great with gorgeous real-world locations, and the spider effects, either real or puppets, are more than convincing in their ick factor. In a lot of ways, it reminds me of Tremors, which came out the same year and too rides the line between horror and comedy. But whereas the giant sandworm flick is both funnier and creepier,
Ah, Jesus! What the hell's going on? What the hell is going on?
Arachnophobia suffers in comparison, always feeling like it's never going far enough in either extreme. Sitting on the fence tonally, never bad by any means, but never truly great either. This is reflected in the cast, that includes the likes of Jeff Daniels, Julian Sands, Brian McNamara, John Goodman, and an assortment of other reliable character actors. Everyone is good here, but you feel like they could have pushed each character further for greater effect. For example, Goodman's Delbert McClintock, Canaima's resident exterminator, despite his usual being a gem with what he's working with, it feels like they could have used his natural effortless comedic talent earlier and more effectively. That said, many of his scenes are the most memorable, with his blue-collar assessments of the escalating situation, playing in fun ways against Julian Sands' clinical academic observations. Jeff Daniels Jennings, though, is the best example of this tonal dissonance. Again, he's good throughout, but kind of stuck in flux. It's only during the climax where he's allowed to let loose and Ross kind of loses his mind, facing his fears in a cackling cathartic mania. What's not to love about Harry from Dumb and Dumber using the old Bic Torch aerosol combo to set ablaze a bunch of hairy arachnids while singing the Itsy Bitsy Spider? This wild third act really makes the movie, delivering the creepy crawly factor up the wazoo with an inappropriately epic finale between our heroes and their skittering foes. It's a testament to the power of ending your movie on a high note. Even if the lead-up is just okay, if you have a really strong climax, you will be remembered, and fondly for that. Marshall was never really able to match up to his buddy Spielberg's work. While he still makes the occasional documentary like the Beach Boys doc a few years back, he's mainly just returned to producing, overseeing the Jurassic franchise. But I would still like to see him legit direct again. Hell, I like to see him do a Jurassic movie, because while he may not be a top-tier director, when he does make something like this, it gets the job done just fine. Because in the end, Arachnophobia is a fun, but flawed midway matinee.
And now back to the fear guy from Terror Town Street.
The 1950s saw a paradigm shift in horror cinema. The old staples of Frankenstein, Dracula, and the Wolfman had run their course, and in their place were mutant monsters, giant bugs, and other such variety running amok. Among the very first of this era was 1954's Them. You have to say it that way because of the exclamation point. It's them! The plot concerns a series of bizarre disappearances around the New Mexico desert, leading to the discovery of giant-ass ants, spawned by the radiation fallout from the original atomic bomb tests. It's now up to a police sergeant, an FBI agent, and 2 scientists to figure out how to destroy this irradiated menace before it multiplies and supplants humanity as the dominant race walking the earth. Before we get started, yes, kiddos, this is old. Refrain from tired-ass retorts like, ugh, it's in black and white, or those puppets are so obviously fake. How about you use something we used to possess called imagination and come at a piece of art from the perspective from when it was contemporary? Because on raw aesthetics, pure excitement, and good old movie magic, Them is brilliant. A big part of that is down to director Gordon Douglas, who shot and treated the story seriously despite its silly premise. He saw the limitations of the ant puppets and as often as he could shot with insinuation, shadows on the walls, or even better, just letting us know of encroaching 6-legged freaks by their vocalization, made by combining the sounds of birds and tree frogs, resulting in this really eerie, unsettling chirping. And when he does show the ants, the erratic, jerky movements of the puppets sell the insectoid nature of the movie's monsters. Them was a movie Warner Brothers had very little faith in. Originally conceived as a color film shot in 3D, the budget was slashed shortly before production began. So, it was a shock to many when it not only became a huge hit, it got an Academy Award nomination for its special effects. It ultimately lost to Disney's equally impressive but much more expensive 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Yet despite not walking away with the win, Them's cultural reach was far greater. For starters, I credit this movie with flamethrowers becoming the popular cinematic weapon to use against inhuman threats. No one's gonna cry war crime if what you're dousing in napalm ain't human. Hell, without this, would we have gotten the Alien film series or the Fallout video games in the capacity that we do? And that's before we even consider the entire wellspring of copycats and also-rans that sprouted up and descended upon the drive-ins, promising their own tales of humongous creepy crawlies. Tarantula, the Black Scorpion, the Deadly Mantis, Earth vs. the Spider, the beginning of the end. The subgenre quickly became a parody of itself, the type of movies other movies reference when calling back to 50s sci-fi and horror films to point out how cheesy they were. But the difference in quality between Them and everything it preceded is stark. For one, the caliber of actors here is head and shoulders above, with an Oscar winner like Edmund Gwynn legitimizing the whole picture as Dr. Medford.
We may be witnesses to a biblical prophecy come true. And there shall be destruction and darkness come upon creation, and the beast shall reign over the earth.
Then there's James Whitmore, Joan Weldon, and a pre-Gunsmoke James Arness filling out the main cast. They're all written with wit and intelligence, like for example Weldon's Pat Medford, Doc's daughter and fellow brain. In particular, she's interesting from a modern lens. She's not a damsel in distress. She's portrayed as clearly smarter than Arness's Bob or Whitmore's Ben, while not dismissing their practical feedback to her scientific insights. And even though Bob and Ben still lean on traditional gender roles and balk at her wanting to go into dangerous situations with them, Pat counters not by demeaning, demoralizing, or dismissing them, but by backing it up with logic and reason that she has to go with them.
There are more important things to find out than whether all the ants are dead. You wouldn't know what to look for.
Well, you tell us what to look for.
Look, Bob, there's no time to give you a fast course in insect pathology. So let's stop all the talk and get on with it.
Pretty radical for its day. If only modern writers could portray gender dynamics this well and even-handedly.
Okay.
In keeping with the subject of the cast, there's a blink-and-you-miss-it early appearance of a pre-Star Trek Leonard Nimoy, and Fess Parker is particularly memorable as a catty Texan locked up in a loony bin. He left such an impression with his single scene that Walt Disney cast him for Davy Crockett later that year. The only false step I can even think of is that in the climax, one of the main characters dies, and I feel they weren't given enough reverence to their sacrifice, but it also happens during a heavy action scene, where there is no time to do so I gotta give it a pass. The acting and character work across the board is so tight here, it just feels way more real than a concept like this you'd think could pull off. And that's where the other key element that differentiates Them from its lessers really comes into focus: the quality of its science fiction. Good sci-fi doesn't have to have real hard science, but it does have to have believable speculative science. No, we can't just extract dino DNA from mosquitoes trapped in amber to fill your theme park with prehistoric beasties. But the science presented to do so is plausible, and as such you believe its verisimilitude. Them is cut from the same cloth. The ants here behave like regular ants. They aren't suddenly monsters due to the radiation. They're still doing what nature designed them to do. The nuclear fallout has simply made their cold machine-like swarms and modus operandi supersized, and that's all the more frightening. They have no individuality, no sense of self-preservation. It is all in service to the collective. All they know to do is consume and proliferate. Given the time it was made, the allegories to the fears of communism are obvious. It's also not lost to me that this came out the same year as the original Godzilla. Both tackle the anxieties of the atomic age, whereas the Japanese took their collective trauma and personified it in a nuclear-powered kaiju that could only be stopped by another weapon of mass destruction, bringing up the fears of nuclear proliferation and escalation. Us Americans looked at it from the fear of the unknown, the unforeseen consequences of opening Pandora's box on a subatomic level. The movie's ending monologue best illustrates this.
When man entered the atomic age, he opened a door into a new world. What we'll eventually find in that new world, nobody can predict.
Film is at the crossroads of art and history. Not only is a movie a time capsule of the moods and sentiments of a culture at a specific place and moment, it's also a benchmark for the progression of the technical craft of making the unbelievable believable. Yes, any talented asshole today with a MacBook and a dream can produce amazing special effects on like no budget. But what's more impressive to me is seeing how those who came before had to use practical ingenuity to achieve the same thing. Movies like this are testament to that. So I beseech y'all, try and enjoy something older than yourself, because Them is one of the best sci-fi movies ever made and full-on top-shelf cinema. Thanks y'all for watching the first of which I hope will be many Summerween Spooktacular double features to come. But now I'd like to hear from y'all. Like, comment, share, or subscribe if you feel so inclined. Give me your Summerween recommendations. I'd love to hear them. But most importantly, until next time, stay safe out there and stay cool.